Do you ever feel some days like your brain is just working against you? Like it's trudging through mud. You can't focus, you can't remember stuff, your productivity's in the toilet? Yeah, well, that's happened to me too. And today I want to share 4 tips for helping you improve your mental clarity and reduce some of that brain fog. Welcome to another video. My name is Dan Fox, and if you're new here, on this channel I try to dive into what it means to live a well-designed life. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure you head on down, hit the subscribe button, and hit the little bell to make sure you're notified of my future videos. Now, before I dive into the tips, I feel like I need to mention the obligatory diet, exercise, and sleep. The better you take care of yourself, the better your body's going to take care of you, and your physical health and your mental health are tied at the hip. This is something that's become painfully obvious the older I get. I'll be 40 next month. But putting that sad story aside, the older I get, the more I realize just how pivotal our physical health is to our mental well-being. All right, my first tip is to focus on one thing at a time. You would think with all of the research behind multitasking that the myth that we could multitask would have died a fiery death a long time ago, but it's one of these myths that still seem to persist. You'll find people all the time talking about how awesome they are at multitasking, and multitasking isn't a thing. Really all it is task switching, and studies have shown that the more you switch tasks, especially when you switch tasks from one difficult thing to another difficult thing, that you lose a ton of efficiency and mental capacity while you're in the process of switching. Now, maybe if you're a person that likes to do the laundry and brush their teeth at the same time, that kind of multitasking is acceptable. But 99.9% of the time, just don't even bother trying to multitask. Knock one thing out at a time. Tip number 2 is to create intentional routines for yourself. You'll find as you work on a routine and slowly you develop that routine into habit, that it frees up a bunch of mental margin for you to focus on creating new routines or dedicating your mental space to something else. This is one reason, for instance, why I've been so consistent over the years with having a morning routine. I load things into my day that are going to benefit my day overall, but I load them into the part of the morning where I'm the freshest and I'm the least distracted. Things like reading, meditation, my workout, things like that. That way I'm not fighting myself and draining motivation, which is a finite resource. I'm not fighting that later on in the day by putting those things off. Some people really like to have wind down routines for the day to help kind of prepare them for getting ready for bed. But the overall benefit to having a routine is it's something that you can develop into a habit so that you can kind of do it mindlessly. Not like a robot, but in a way that doesn't really take much thought to be able to accomplish these things. For instance, I'm currently in the process of trying to improve as a creator, and so I'm trying to set up some routines around that. Many creators I respect and look up to often mention having routines around the actual act of creation. That creation isn't just something that happens naturally. That it's one of those things where repetition actually breeds quality, and the more reps you put in, the better you'll get at whatever it is you're trying to get better at. I mean, it seems logical, but when it comes to creativity, at least for me, I tended to put that in a different mental bucket. And so developing a routine around how I'm going to be more creative in an intentional way is something that I'm currently trying to implement in my life. All right, tip number 3 is to actively seek ways to try to declutter your mind. Now, under this tip, I have 2 specific examples that I want to share. The first example is just straight up consume less information. We live in a world now where almost anything you could possibly want to know is a few button clicks or at the tip of your fingertips away. And on one hand, that's cool and that's really powerful, but on the other hand, it contributes to kind of this extreme distraction that we all face on a day-to-day basis. And no one's going to take it upon themselves to help you be less distracted. It's something you're going to have to do yourself. I gave an example in the video last week, I'll link it up here for you, where I talked about not doing my internet rounds, not checking social media, not checking my email, not diving into work until I had done my morning routine. The thing I found is I needed to interrupt my own patterns in order to get my morning routine done, because I was allowing myself to get distracted first thing in the morning. And once you're distracted, it's really hard to dial that back in. It takes a ton of work. Now, in that example, I was trying to address something very specific, but it works more broadly too. If you find yourself mindlessly consuming information, you're allowing that to distract you, but more importantly, you're allowing that to take up subconscious space. And whether you realize it or not, your brain is processing all that information that you're consuming. So if you feel like your brain is cluttered, feels a bit foggy, try limiting the amount of information you're consuming, or be more intentional about the times of day where you're consuming that information. The second way you can work to declutter your mind is to offload things that you can't stop thinking about or worrisome thoughts. Offload them into some kind of physical notebook. I like field notes, and this is not a sponsored video. It happens to be a good size for me. It can fit in my pocket. I use it for this practice of offloading thoughts. I also use it to take notes on ideas, things I have in the moment that I'm worried I'm going to forget later. But the benefit to doing this is that it frees up your mental space to have to stop worrying about that thing right then. I find this particularly useful if I can't fall asleep because my mind is racing a million miles an hour. I'll just get up, whatever it is I'm thinking about, I'll just blurt out on a piece of paper, and then I go back to bed, and I find that my brain is able to kind of let go of those things I was worried about, because now it knows I have a physical copy somewhere else. I've dumped that information to another place, and I can worry about it later. All right, tip number 4 for gaining some mental clarity is to practice being more self-aware. Now, I know that's really nebulous, and this can be a hard nut to crack, and each person's a little bit different. But for me, there's kind of 2 primary aspects. There's how you're feeling and what you're thinking. So for the first thing, how you're feeling, something that I've learned over time that's really worked well for me is mindfulness practice or meditation. Now, I definitely fell victim to stereotypes about mindfulness practice or meditation back in the day. It all seemed a bit woo-woo for me, but my time as a martial artist helped introduce me to the practical aspects of meditation and what it actually was. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what meditation is. I think a lot of people think of meditation as this way to kind of get out of your body or divorce yourself from your thoughts and just kind of be in a state of not thinking, when it's actually exactly the opposite. A meditation allows you to really focus on being in the moment, being present. And the value of this is that you can experience things that are happening around you. You can think the thoughts that you are already thinking, but you don't have to become emotionally invested in those thoughts. You can kind of allow yourself to be a bystander watching the thoughts happen. I find if I don't meditate for a long period of time, I'll start to get more anxious. Bits of emotion that I wasn't aware were there will kind of flare up at inopportune times. And this just helps me keep my finger on the pulse of how I'm feeling and address those as I go. Now, if you're new to meditation, there's a couple good apps out there. One is Headspace. I used Headspace for a long time. I especially loved their sleep meditations, but I stopped using it because I was having some glitches on my phone. Another good one is an app called Calm. But the point is, if you're not used to doing a meditation, having some kind of guided meditation can really help you to get used to it. Now, moving on to being aware of what you're thinking. Obviously, meditation helps with that a little bit too in the moment, but over a longer term, journaling can be a really powerful tool. I'm reminded of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It was a journal that he never intended for anyone to see, but a journal where he was working through thoughts and challenges that he was having. And this is what the value of journaling is. It's not necessarily a short term, in the moment. It can be, but it's not necessarily for in the moment kind of reflection. It's to help you capture that reflection over time so you can keep your finger on the pulse of things you're thinking and interact with those thoughts later when you have a little more clarity. All right, that's it for me today. If you have any questions or if you have any ideas for tips to gain mental clarity, make sure you head on down to the comments and let me know. And while you're down there, please make sure to hit that like button if you liked the video. It really does help. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. What is this car doing? It's like drag races outside my window. It's like every time I want to record a video, the entire neighborhood like wakes up and is like, let's make a pile of noise. Hopefully you can't hear this. All right, the second way that you can work on decluttering. All right, the second way you can work on decluttering. I can't say decluttering today. I forgot what I had said.